Hi guys, I'm Madison Mary and welcome back to my channel. Today I have my March wrap up for you guys. So I read 9 physical books, 2 ebooks and 1 audiobook, which is surprising. It's my first time reading an audiobook in almost a year. For the genres we have 2 fantasy, 1 historical fantasy, 1 sci-fi, 2 smut, 3 contemporary romances, 1 thriller and 1 non-fiction. For the age ranges we have 8 YA and 4 adult. And then we have my favorite statistic, which is my total page count, and for this month it was 3,801 pages. So as always, I want to start with my lowest rated read and work up to my highest rated reads. And I'm going to actually start today with the DNF. This is my first DNF of the year, I believe, and I'm not that surprised. So my first DNF was Sword in the Stars by Amy Rose Capetta and Corey McCarthy. This is the sequel to Once and Future, which is a sci-fi gender-bent King Arthur retelling. I liked the first one enough to give it like 2.5 stars, and I was curious to see how the sequel would go. And so I started it. I got 12 pages in and decided I can't do this, and then I proceeded to flip through the book and randomly read and see what happens. And I'm glad I didn't read this because it would not have been worth my time. And I'm sorry if that's harsh. I'm sorry if this is a book that you love. That's my own personal opinion. I know that this book is trying to do a lot of great things. The writing, I can't do it. The pop culture references, everything about it, and I can't do it. But if you are curious to see like live reactions of me reading this and DNFing it, do check out one of my latest vlogs because it is hilarious. I also have a 1-star read, and it was a wild ride. That book is King of Lies by Whitney G. I was like, I want a quick read. So I was like on my Kindle and I was like, oh, I remember this book being a quick read. So I grabbed it and I was like, let's read it. Clicked on it and it opened and I started reading it and I was like, what have I gotten myself into? So I didn't read the description of it. So I'm not surprised I didn't like it because it doesn't sound like my kind of a premise. It is about a girl who falls in love with this guy who they then get engaged and married, and then he kidnaps her. Yeah, so he is like the owner of this really famous club, and the two of them meet because they match on like a dating app, and she thinks he's fake because his dating profile is so hot. And it was awful. It flashed back between before they met, while they were dating, and then after he kidnapped her, and it was so cringy. The sex wasn't even great. It was parboiled sex. That's what I'm gonna go with. And it just was not worth it. Sadly, it was so bad that I contemplated picking up the second book because I was like, wait, whoa, where does this go? And because you don't actually find out how he kidnapped her. So I was like, it's fair to say it was a wild ride. So don't recommend it, but it was crazy. The next lowest rating is a 2.5 star. I actually knocked this down from its original rating in a vlog where I said it was 3, and that is The Glass Magician by Caroline Stevermer. This is about Talia Cutler, and she is a stage magician. She goes by the stage name of the Lady of the Lake, and she does some really cool acts. And this is set in a world where there are 3 classes. You have the Sylvestri, I don't really know how to pronounce them still this day. Then you have the Traders and the Solitaires. I'm going to tell you right now, it took me so long to realize what these 3 classes were, how they even function. To this day, I'm still unsure how anything functions except for the Traders, because they're the only ones that you focus on in this standalone novel. And Talia has grown up all her life thinking that she was a solitaire, non-magical, and then a stage trick goes awry and she ends up performing trading magic and her arm turns into feathers, so you can kind of guess what her animal is going to be. That happens, and then it turns out that she's a trader, and a trader who is unable to control their magic is at risk of being killed by a manticore, which is when a trader goes crazy, and I don't really understand what a manticore is, but all I know is they hunt traders who can't control their magic. So now Talia has to learn to control her magic, but at the same time there's a murder going on because part of her stage magician thing is she gets out of work because a trick that she does ends up being patented by this guy, and then that guy dies, and and now her mentor's like in jail. If you can't tell, there's a lot going on in this book, and that was my issue with it. There was just so much going on that this book was trying to do two different plots at the same time, and I like how the murder was concluded, but it was not very well done, and the magic system, apart from a trader, wasn't well explained. This book was just very surface level, and that was really disheartening for me because this had a lot of potential with the magic system. I actually found it very interesting learning about the traders and how they worked, because thankfully they're at least something that we focused on and actually did learn about, but yeah. It's also extremely sexist because it's set in 1905 New York, but you know, that's to be expected if it's, you know, 1905 New York. Okay, then we have my 3-star reads, and that is going to start with Brightly Burning by Alexa Donne. I absolutely adored Alexa Donne's sophomore novel, which is The Stars We Steal, which takes place 40 years before her freshman novel. Is that what you call her debut? Her debut. And I preferred it a lot more. It was like a 4.5-star read for me. This was barely a 3-star read for me. This is a sci-fi retelling of Jane Eyre. I did really like our main character. She is pretty much what kept me going in this book. So I loved Stella. She was really cool. I loved how she stayed true to herself and her belief system, and the way that this ended up taking a turn towards the end. It was very reminiscent to me of The 100 season 1 by Cass Morgan, the CW TV show, because I haven't actually read the books. And the only other character I enjoyed apart from Stella was, let's see, the AI system named Rory. I actually preferred the AI system. It was really cool. It was an awesome concept, and I enjoyed learning about it because that was something that wasn't present in the sequel, which took place earlier on. I just didn't really connect to this or the romance that was in it, which I think is actually an issue that a lot of people have with Jane Eyre in general. So I'm actually not surprised. There was just not much that made sense, and the guy that she's in love with is the captain of this spaceship, and he doesn't do any captaining of the spaceship. So like, I don't understand. How can you be captain of a spaceship if you don't, you know, captain it? Yeah, anyone want to explain that to me? So, I don't know, you could definitely see that she has improved a lot in her writing. If you guys are curious about reading Alexa Donne, do pick up the companion novel instead, because unless you're like a die-hard Jane Eyre fan, this is not great. I just liked being back in this world because there are a lot of, it's the same world as The Stars We Steal, which I did adore, and so that's the reason why I was able to push through this. I think that if I didn't have that connection to the companion novel, this would have been a 2-star read. Another 3-star read for me is going to be The Perfect Escape by Suzanne Park. This book had a lot of potential, and it ended up falling very flat because this book follows two teens, Nate and Kate. Yes, I now realize after I read the book that their names, you know, rhyme. But Nate and Kate both work at a zombie-themed escape room, which is a big part of the description of this book, but there's not a very big part of the story. Two of them work there, and they both start falling for each other. Kate has a very influential dad. Her dad's very rich. He's the head of this DigiTools company, which is this huge tech company that is in their town, so she's very rich. However, her dad is very overprotective to the extent that he logs who her phone calls are to, how long they are for, like when she leaves the house, all these different things, and like sends her weekly updates asking like questions about all her like online activity and things like that. Like it's really messed up in my opinion. So she wants to get away from him, so she wants to find a way to make money in order to escape from her dad's kind of reign, but she needs it to be untraceable money or else he'll find her. And then we have Nate, who comes from a Korean American family, which was the part that I really loved about it, was seeing the Korean American representation because it comes from Suzanne Park herself. But Nate is the smartest kid in his school. He's considered a skid because he's a scholarship kid, and he gets propositioned by these bullies at his school to botch his GPA for the rest of the semester since he has already gotten accepted into college, so that the rest of the kids in the school have a better opportunity of getting into college with a better final GPA, and they offer him a lot of money because he is not financially well off and he thinks he could help his parents, so he's dealing with thinking about maybe botching his GPA while these kids actually start threatening him if he does not do it. So then the two of them end up teaming up for a survival competition in which if your pair wins it, you get a crap ton of money, and so Kate and Nate decide to take part in that. The issue I had was the fact that the survival competition doesn't take place until like the third quarter of this book, and it's just that third quarter because in the last quarter it doesn't take place. And because I went into this expecting that to be a massive part of this story, that really let it down to me. This book definitely dragged with the first half of it because I enjoyed getting to know them, but it just didn't live up to it for me. I thought the romance was cute, but it could have been more. I have read better romances that are YA in this sense. I feel like I'm just saying all the bad things. I did enjoy it. It was fun. I loved Kate. She was such a fun and sassy character. Even though she was going through so many different things, I enjoyed being inside her head and I really understood her as a character. Plus seeing her during the survival competition, she was just so badass. Really loved her. And when it comes to Nate, there were some times where I didn't love his perspective, but I did love the Korean American representation, so that was a huge standout for me. And like I said, even though the survival competition is only a quarter of this book, it was a very solid and very, very strong quarter of this book. That's why I wish we had more of it, because it's what really made me love this book so much, was that short experience of it. It actually kind of reminded me a little bit of the Hunger Games in a sense. So yeah. The last 2 to 5 star book I have for you is Awake by Natasha Preston. This was the audiobook that I listened to. Very glad I listened to this. Natasha Preston is actually one of my go-to audiobook authors because her books are just so easy to listen to on audio, and I also just love that they're narrated in British accents, so that's like a huge plus for me. But I went into this blind because I actually have all of her books on Audible already downloaded, so I went to this being like, oh, I don't really know what this is about. So I started it, and it started off a bit weird, and I was like, something seems a bit off here. And then as I kept reading it, I was like, this seems a little bit cultish. And then as I kept listening, I go, oh my god, it is a cult. So it's this girl who has no memories before she was the age of 4. She ends up meeting this new guy at school and falling head over heels in love with him. And then it turns out that this guy is actually part of a cult, although of course they don't believe it as a cult, and he has been brought into her life to bring her back to the cult as a sacrifice. And that's what the story is about. Now, the thing with a lot of Natasha Preston's books is that while they are all somewhat thrillers, they are also romance thrillers, which is kind of what I like so much about them and listening to them. So I did like the romance between the two characters. It was a fun and enjoyable read. It's definitely not something to rave about, and it's definitely not like a quality thriller, but it's something that I just love. It's kind of, her books are like trashy thrillers that you are so addicted to and you keep listening to, and you're like, she has always these very crazy endings that I'm a huge fan of that you just like, don't see coming. This one wasn't as crazy as I would say my favorite book of hers is The Cabin. That's my favorite. This one is definitely better than her book, The Cellar. That was not a good one. But I still enjoyed this. It was very interesting, and just learning about the cult and just the way that it functions was very interesting, and you know. Okay, time for the 4-star reads. So I'm going to start off with Meet Me at Midnight by Jessica Pennington. This is a YA contemporary that I really enjoyed. It's been quite a while since I've read a YA contemporary that I've really fallen in love with, and this is definitely one of them. We follow 2 teens, Sydney and Asher, and for the last 10 years their families have rented the same twin lake houses next to each other. During that time, Sydney and Asher have waged an intense prank war against each other. However, this year, when a prank goes very badly, Sydney and Asher get their families kicked out of their lake houses. So Sydney and Asher decide to call a truce in order to take revenge on the person that kicked them out. I was really surprised by this ending. I thought it was pretty perfectly done. Part of me is wondering if this is like more of a 4.5 star read, but I don't know. This could be a 4.5 star read. If you are a fan of YA contemporaries, definitely pick this one up. It is such a fun read. I tabbed it as well because there were just so many good moments and it was really hilarious, and I very much related to Sydney as a character, especially in the romance spectrum, because of the way that she just was when it came to relationships. Was something that I very much felt I do as well. Sydney and Ash are both swimmers, so at the end of this summer they're about to go to the same college in the fall and be swimmers on the swim team. But I loved their banter. It was really sweet, and I loved seeing their romance blossom because you do get to see both perspectives, and in the beginning you're kind of like, you see it develop because you're in their heads, and that's what I really, really loved about it. There's also a drive-in movie theater date that happens in this, and that is like my favorite thing in the entire world. Really enjoyed this. It was super fun. And I also love the familial relationships in this because the parents are very involved in this plot, which is not something that you always see in YA novels. So the next 4 out of 5-star book is You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hogle. The humor in this is 5 stars. However, the first third of this did drag on a bit, and I'll explain that in a second. We follow Naomi Westfield and Nicholas Rose, and they're currently engaged to one another, and their relationship is down the toilet. So Naomi starts wondering how she can get out of this marriage that's going to be happening in 3 months, because the issue is that if she breaks it off, her fiance's, Nicholas's mother, will make Naomi foot the non-refundable wedding bill, because Nicholas's mother is a horrible person. You realize very quickly reading this book. So Naomi comes up with a plan to start to do things to bother Nicholas in order to get him to call off the wedding himself. However, Nicholas catches on, and you kind of start seeing a little bit of a war going between them. Do want to quickly say that this is not enemies to lovers. Even though there is a lot of animosity between the two characters in the beginning, that is not what this is about. You learn very, very quickly that Nicholas doesn't have the same animosity towards Naomi as she does to him, and that's a huge part of this novel. Miscommunication is a huge issue between the two of these characters because Naomi is very, very childish within the first third of this book. She becomes very stubborn, she's lost in her own world in a sense, and that's a big part of what's wrong with this couple. And so it's more so about this couple learning to love each other again and forgive each other for their own faults and kind of rediscover each other for who they truly are. After the halfway mark, I was just like, I was done. I was like, that's it. I love this book. It is amazing. So the last 2/3 of this book is 5 stars. The first third of this is like 3.5, which is how it rounds out to a 4-star. Now let's move on to my 5-star reads. I'm going to quickly start off with a non-fiction. So I've been talking to you guys about the school books I've been reading for my neuroscience literacy class, and the third book we're reading this semester is Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell. Let me grab the dust jacket quickly. Here we go. And I really enjoyed it as a non-fiction. It talks a lot about how we as a society deal with strangers, our perception of strangers. It talks about very famous cases such as Jerry Sandusky, the Sandra Bland case, Amanda Knox. This was a really interesting book about like human interactions, and so that's something that you're into. Check it out. 5 stars, which doesn't normally happen with school books, but this 100% was. Then I'm going to talk to you guys about Stay Gold. This comes out in May. What's the exact date? May 26th. Oh, that's still so far away. But this book, I cried at the end of this book. This is about a transgender teen named Pony, and he has just moved schools because he is an army brat and his dad's just moved town because of that. And he's excited to start this new high school for his senior year because after coming out as trans at his old school, while there were some people who supported him, there were some people who didn't, and he was just looking for a fresh start. So he's decided to go stealth into this new school, and going stealth means that he's not telling people that he's a trans male. And so it's about his journey, and he falls in love with this girl who is one of the cheerleaders at the school. Her name is Georgia. And it's very interesting. So we follow Pony and Georgia's POV, and you learn quickly that Georgia, although she's a cheerleader, she doesn't have the passion for it anymore, and she's very much into journalism, and that's what she wants to do. However, she feels immense pressure to be popular because of bullying that she had when she was a kid. And so I will admit, this book was 4 stars up until I cried at the end, and I was like, this is easily a 5 stars, because I had initially taken off a star rating because Georgia is annoying. She's really annoying. But her point of view is very important because when I'm not spoiling anything, but when she does find out that Pony is trans, it brings up the whole idea of, you know, what it means for someone who thought they were, like, how do I explain this without being rude? Because it brings up the whole idea for Georgia as what it means to her, like how some people think about, oh, you're trans and you're a male, but like I thought I was straight, and like what does that mean for me? Like that whole conversation is something that occurs in this. And then the representation of a transgender teen just in general, or any LGBTQ teen any LGBTQ plus teen is so prominent in this. You know, there's a lot of talk about top surgery, binding, what binding means for certain trans teens, being stealth, coming out to certain people, what it's like to be in a community, the anxiety to go into bathrooms. There is talk about suicidal ideation. There is a lot of homophobia, transphobia. There is hate crimes in this, like literal violence that occurs. So it is very tough to read at times, which is why I did cry. Pony does have an older sister named Rocky, and she is one of my favorites. I love the sibling relationship in this. It is one of my favorite sibling relationships I've ever read. Yeah, there was just so much about this book that was amazing and important that it ended up balancing out. Then I'm gonna move on to the last 2 5-star books, and they're actually part of a series. Hang on, let me just grab them both. Oh. So we have *ɪନିର୍sᴛᴏ Ruthless Gods by Emily A. Duncan. I loved this book. It is set in a sort of Russian-Polish inspired world in which you have the Kalyazin and the Trinavians, and they have been at war for centuries, I think, at this point, like on and off for centuries. And the Trinavians have blood magic, and they are considered heretics because they denounce the gods. And then you have Kalyazins who love the gods. There are 20 gods in the Parthenon, and they have had clerics who can commune with the gods, but they have not had a cleric in 30 years until Nadia was born. And she is the only current cleric, and she is very special because she is the first cleric who can commune with all 20 gods of the Parthenon and get powers from them. So by praying to the gods, Nadia gets powers from them. So she is kind of Kalyazin's savior. So you follow Nadia, and then you also follow Seraphim, and he is the crowned prince of Trinavia, and he is, when this book starts off, he is tracking down the cleric, and then he ends up having to go home because there are some things going on in his court that have him thinking that someone's trying to assassinate him. And so that's a huge plotline for him. And then you don't follow Malachiash, but he is another main character of ours, and he is a Trinavian who has fled Trinavia, and he is currently helping Nadia and he is helping Nadia enact revenge on Trinavia. I loved this so much. I do understand why people do have some issues with it. I know that Nadia starts off very naive, but she does grow a lot towards the end of this book, and her growth in Ruthless Gods is still really great. She definitely grows much more of a backbone. I love, this is not a spoiler, I love the romance between Malachiash and Nadia. It is one of my favorites. I get why you people don't like it, okay? I get it, but I like it, so don't hate on me for that. Seraphim is someone who I didn't like in the beginning, but he grew on me, and he's someone you can't help but pity. You pity Seraphim to the maximum. I have never pitied a character as much as that poor broken boy. You also get a lot of gay times in this book. You get a couple gay times in this, but definitely more in this one. Do be aware, because there is blood magic, there is a lot of cutting and self-harm, but for the fact of, you know, not like depression, but for the magic. And there is also eye horror. The eye horror is a lot more in this book. It didn't really bother me. There was like one scene that I was like, oh god, that is disgusting. But it was still really cool. The details of this world and the magic system and the religions is crazy. Every chapter starts out with like a little excerpt from like the history and prophecies and stuff. That's crazy to me. Like, I can't even get over how much work went into these books. I love them. I love the setting. I'm so scared. This book ended and I was like, the hell. This book ended and I was like, the hell. And now, I don't know what's gonna happen in the last book. This book follows Nadia's journey. This book follows Seraphim's journey. The third book's gonna follow Malachiash's journey. And I'm just so afraid for all of these characters because I really don't know how this book is going to end. And I love it. It is delicious. It is dark, it is gritty, it is gory, and it is just fantastic. So, that is me raving about this series. I'm really excited. My copy of this should come in mail this weekend because, you know, with how everything's going, it's hard to get books. But yes, that is my March wrap up. I hope this wasn't too long, but it's 12 books, so we'll see. If you guys did enjoy this video, please hit the like button down below. If you want to see more of me, please go to my channel. And until next time, thanks a bunch, guys. Bye!